Warning, there are spoilers ahead, as this is my thoughts on and defense of the title character in Age of Ultron. I'll start with the easy and not as common complaint, Ultron's creator. In the comics, it was originally Ant-Man, the original Ant-Man, him. In the movie, it's a combination of Stark and Banner. This just makes more sense, especially given how much weirder the comics started off. Stark's main focus is on grounded tech of hardware and software, so a robot AI makes a lot of sense for him, as opposed to Ant-Man, who is insanely varied in his weird science of shrinking and speaking to ants, two very different fields. And in creating AI, in the comics pretty much by accident, would make Stark look almost amateurish by comparison, considering that's basically his field. Simply put, Ultron fits into Stark's wheelhouse better. The only part I didn't think was needed was him bringing in his science bro, Bruce Banner, for help, especially since Jarvis seemed to be automating much of the programming. It's way outside of Banner's focus and just seems to set him up as even more of a tragic character later on by making him a co-conspirator in Tony's mad plan. I also feel that Banner should have argued against him more, given that he has a really good first-hand knowledge of how science can go terribly wrong. Now on to the big complaint that a lot of people had. That's that Ultron doesn't act like an AI. He's very snarky, very human-like. There's a reason for that. Technically he is an AI, but in a way he isn't. Why, you ask? I assume? Because you can't go by the initial and what turned out to be incorrect assumption that Tony Stark made. The assumption was that Loki's scepter was some advanced alien tech that had an AI program in it. Later, in the movie, this turned out to be completely incorrect, and it was actually the ancient mysterious artifact of the mind, gem, or stone. So while it is technically AI, the program Tony made it on was based on something far more alien and different. Though it bears mentioning that even if Stark was right, and it was just alien tech, basing an AI program on a completely alien idea of intelligence from your own probably wasn't such a good idea anyway. Back to the mind gem. My first thought was that the stone had imprints of various personalities, and the one that Stark copied was the one that happened to be closest to the surface. The movie makes a great deal more sense if some wacko megalomaniac nihilist with father issues was a personality Ultron was based on, like the version of Kim Jong-un from The Interview, in a robot body. But then I got to thinking how similar he was to Stark. Most people seem to chalk that up to the fact that Tony programmed him, and his early research into Tony when he was first coming into creation. The reason I don't buy this is when I get to one line when Ultron is speaking to Claw and says something along the lines of keeping both your friends and your enemies rich till you can tell which from which. Claw associates it with Stark, which throws Ultron into an arm-ripping tantrum. If Ultron had learned the line from his research into Stark, he'd know it was something he had said. This led me to think that the mind gem simply reflected back Tony's own mind in the gem, but a funhouse warped version of it. Tony's ego going mad and all that, or something like that, since I'm unsure of the actual fitting psychological terms. To me, this is the best explanation. It explains his quips, his egos, and his father issues, as Tony has with Howard Stark. The constant flip-outs would be the warping effect. Either of these explanations would go a long way to explain why he wanted to make himself so human, which a lot of people also had complaints about, and why he wanted an even more human-like body, which is why he was making the android that became Vision. Though the Tony version would explain why, despite himself, he seems to have some natural heroics, Ultron, because even though his grand plan was to kill off most of human life, he didn't target non-threats throughout most of the movie, even though that would have made most of his fights easier. It could also explain why he made the switch physical, though, to be honest, he probably had wireless backups before Vision severed his wireless connection. Deep down, though, I think Ultron wanted to be defeated. and most of existence was just a cry for attention. On that fun note, I shall leave you. Until next time.